let's go. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, I can see.
You can see it now?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. So as I was saying, we screen on moving. Or there's a delay in moving. Okay, come on, Mr. Screen. What's going on here? Okay, starting to move. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we were looking at comparative method, character, ability, and we're going to be looking at margin. Okay. And I begin by saying that margin, based on page 35, starting page 35 of your text, the bottom section. Okay. And margin is the bank's profit potential. This is usually set by executive management, and there are certain criteria that they look at. Okay, we'll get into that in a little detail. But two of the elements where banks make their profit on loans or lending products is on interest rates charged and also on fees charged. And basically there are two questions, one for each. Is the interest rate priced to reflect the risk? And are any fees that are charged, are they in line with the product granted? And we're going to get into that in a little bit, starting with the interest rates. Okay, so let's look first of all at interest rates. Okay, and you could follow along also in your text. So we said one of the main questions, or the question really to ask, is the interest rate priced to reflect the risk? And we want to look at different types of credit facilities or lending facilities or loan facilities, loan types. So let's first of all start with overdrafts. And I think you have some blanks to fill in, so you could probably start filling in if you wish. But again, the information will be forwarded to you in the PowerPoint. So don't spend too much time or be overly concerned of writing all the filling in the blanks at this time. Okay, so overdrafts are usually charged a margin over prime. Okay, and what that means is the prime rate or the prime lending rate Well, let's begin by talking about the central bank prime. Okay, the prime rate is or the lending rate is set by the central bank of the Bahamas. Okay, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think that's 4.25%. So when we talk about a margin over prime, a financial institution would decide how much more they want to make on top of that prime interest rate. Okay, so if the prime interest rate is 4.25 or 4.5, and a bank wants to make, say, 10.5%, or let's say 10.25% on overdrafts. So if you're looking at a prime rate of 4.25, we subtract that from the 10.25, and so we know that we would have to add 6 more points to that. So in order to get the 10, we add 6. That 6 that we add is called the margin or the spread. Okay, so sometimes it may be referred to as the margin, or it may be referred to as the spread. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, so so that's overdrafts. So overdrafts are usually charged a margin over prime. We want to look at personal loans or consumer loans. Okay, consumer loans are usually a variable rate tied to prime, and personal loans or consumer loans are normally some of your highest. So you could probably be charging about 12%, some people up to 15, 16%. Okay, so again, it's a variable rate tied to prime, and that variable rate that may change from time to time with the personal loan, and that depends on what happens with the central bank prime. Normally, banks will again tie it to prime, which is determined by the central bank. But in the Bahamas, our interest rates are not as they don't change as often as the interest rates, say, in USA. So in the USA, rates can change on a daily basis. Sometimes they change twice a day. Okay, here in the Bahamas, I think the quickest we've had interest rate change is set by the central bank, the prime rate change by them, is probably 6 months. Okay, but usually, you know, it takes about a year or a couple of years, depending on how the economy is doing, and the central bank will adjust the prime rate up or down. Over the past few years, the interest rate, has been going down, and that's because they want to use it to stimulate the economy. So normally, when you want to stimulate the economy, the central bank will lower the prime rate. If the economy is doing extremely well, and they may want to slow it down a bit because it's growing too fast, and they may want to control some inflation. So what they'll do is they'll go up on the prime rate. But usually, like I said, in the last 10 or so years, the interest rate, the prime rate by the central bank has been going down. Okay, so so personal loans are tied to the prime, and the difference between that and the overdrafts, normally they operate basically the same. Okay, but it's just that because overdrafts are for 1 year duration, you normally pretty much set it and forget it, so to speak. Whereas with the personal loans, because they can go anywhere from longer than a year to 3 years to 5 years, 7 years. There's some now even 10 years. You definitely want to make it a variable rate tied to the prime. And again, the margin is the same. So for a 16%, for a 16% interest rate, you'll subtract the 4.25 from the 16%, and that'll give you your margin or your spread. Okay. Now with mortgage loans, some people call them RLs or real estate loans. It's usually a fixed rate tied to prime, and I use the word fixed kind of loosely, and that's in inverted commas, because again, based on what happens with what happens with the prime rate, it may fluctuate based on what happens with the prime rate. So if the prime rate goes up, the mortgage loan overall rate would also go up. If it goes down, the mortgage rate will also go down. But we normally talk about it being a fixed rate because of the long-term nature of the mortgage. So the spread on a margin is normally fixed. So you can't vary that. So if a client has a 7%, if a client has a 7.5% mortgage, the margin or spread normally would float with that. Okay, so we've looked at overdrafts, we've looked at personal loans, and we've looked at mortgage loans, the interest rates on those. So now let's take a quick look at fees. Okay, and the fees, the question you want to ask, are they in line with the product granted? And these may be based on the product type and or the complexity of any administrative work required. So, for example, let's say we have a regular mortgage loan, a lot loan or residential mortgage loan. The fee associated with that may be, say, 1%, okay, or maybe 1.5%, right? Whereas if you look
Good
at
night, Mr. Lawrence. I'm so sorry. I'm just getting in. Please accept my apologies.
No problem, no problem. Okay. Whereas with a construction mortgage, you may charge, say, 2.5%. Okay. So for a lot loan or residential purchase mortgage, the fees that you charge the client, which is a one-time fee, like I said, maybe 1% or 1.5%, but for construction mortgage, it would be higher, say 2%, 2.5%, or even 3%. Again, it depends on the lender. Okay, and that will take me to the next point, and I'll come back to this because I said it depends on the lender, but we have to bear in mind that you want to be competitive with other lenders. So you don't want to charge your fees so much higher than your competitors that you become not as attractive. Okay, so so what some lenders may do is they may have an attractive interest rate, but make up with it by slightly going up on the fees side of it. Okay, so or vice versa, or they may have a higher interest rate and go low on the fees. But normally it's the other way around, that you will go a little lower on the interest rate, but you would up the fees, because those fees are taken at that point in time, and they contribute to that month or that quarter's or that year's profits. Okay, so so you'd want to go up on the fees because that's a one-time charge normally for mortgages. With overdraft facilities are a yearly basis. Consumer loans is a one-time fee. Letters of credit and some of the other products which are reviewed and renewed annually, the fees are also taken on an annual basis. So basically your one-time fees are on your personal loans and your mortgage loans, okay? So again, let me go back to talking about the construction mortgage and why it may be higher on a construction mortgage than, say, a lot mortgage or a residential purchase mortgage. When you're doing a lot or residential purchase mortgage, normally you have when you're dispersing funds, you disperse funds basically it's a one-time thing, even though you may have monies going in several directions. So if I were to draw down a lot loan or a residential purchase mortgage, I would probably have, let's say I would make a payment for the lot. I would make a payment to the attorney, the fees, the lawyer's fees, and also stamp tax and all those sort of things. And there may be some disbursements for other things, such as if there's insurance that has to be taken over the residential property, or life insurance for the individual, okay? Or sometimes there's something called mortgage indemnity insurance, where if the client is unable to come up with a full down payment, they can make a minimum payment, and the bank would sell them what they call mortgage indemnity insurance, which will cover the shortfall of the deposit. So, so while you may be sending the money out 3 or 4 different ways, it's normally a one-time drawdown. Whereas with a construction mortgage, remember when we were talking about construction mortgages in terms of in the previous class, we were saying that they're drawn down in stages. And so remember we talked about the foundation stage, blocking it up, the bell course, the roof, windows and doors stage, retention. So, and we said that sometimes the average construction takes a period of 6 months. And we were talking about the interest that is paid over those different stages. So month 1, we draw down some money for the lot, for the to do the foundation. Maybe month 2 we draw down some more money. Month 3 we draw down some money. So over 6 or so month period, we are dealing administratively with this account. So we're handling this particular account, the construction mortgage. We're handling it more than one time. So as a result, we would charge a higher fee on the construction mortgage because of the ongoing administrative work associated with drawing it down. Okay, so whereas a lot or residential purchase mortgage may be just a one-time thing, we draw it down, put the loan on the books, the customer starts paying the next month. On a construction mortgage, we're gonna have to take that up every month for at least 6 or more months. And so because of the amount of work involved with our staff, we charge more fees on the construction mortgage. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right, so I want us to consider 2 things that one I call TLC and PACT, okay, and we're gonna look at this in more detail um, in uh, in chapter 8. Okay, chapter 8, page 41 is where we talk about PACT, P-A-C-T. Okay, I'll put it up on the screen. Okay, so TLC and PACT. So as you see there on the top, it says interest rates on loan products are determined by these two, TLC and PACT. What do they mean? Okay. Again, this is not in your book. TLC is not in your book, but PACT is on page 41. And so I'm just going to go through it briefly here, and we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail in chapter 8. So when we consider the overall product risk, okay, we're looking at the products now, okay, and to determine how we price it, right, in terms of interest. So we're looking at the product itself, okay. So TLC is associated with the product, okay, or the product risk. So the first thing we consider is the type of loan risk, okay. So what type of loan is it? Okay, is it an overdraft? Is it a consumer loan? Is it a mortgage loan? And what is the risk associated with it? So for consumer loans and overdrafts, they tend to be unsecured in nature, mainly nowadays. Okay, sometimes we may take a chattel mortgage over a car for a car loan, which is a type of personal loan or type of consumer loan, right? But generally speaking, very seldom do we take security over overdrafts and consumer loans or personal loans. And so we call them unsecured loans or unsecured risks. And so they would normally tend to have a higher interest rate. The interest rate on those would tend to be higher because they're more risky. Okay, and also it tends to be high on overdrafts and also on consumer loans because of the term. Okay, so because they are shorter in terms of nature. In the case of overdrafts, they're 1 year or 12 months. In the case of personal loans, they are anywhere from say, more than 1 year to up to 10 years, depending on the organization, the lender. So they're fairly, short term. So you would want to charge a higher interest rate because of the short term. Okay. Whereas with a mortgage loan, because they are normally 15, 20, 25, 30, and I think some people even doing 35 years, depending on the age of the people borrowing. You'll find that because of two things, the loan is actually longer term, and it's also secured by real estate, which is fairly good collateral security. We tend to say we will give the customer a lower rate. So whereas on overdrafts and consumer loans, you may have interest rates of so let's say 10 to 16%. On mortgages, you may have rates as low as 5% up to 8%. Right. So the overall product risk, T stands for the type of loan risk. The second to consider is liquidity risk. Okay, what is liquidity risk? Liquidity is based on what the the funds that the financial institution has available to lend. Okay, so if the financial institution is kind of low on lending funds, right, on funds that they can lend out, the interest rate tend to be a little higher. If the lending institution has quite a bit of liquidity, you know, a lot more funds to lend than normal, the interest rate tends to be lower. Okay, so we have the type of loan risk, we have the liquidity risk, and then we have the third one, which we'll look at in greater detail in a moment, is customer risk. Okay, so we have the type of loan risk, the liquidity risk, and now we have the customer risk. Okay, and when we consider the customer risk, okay, there are four things that we look at when we talk about the customer risk. Okay, and that is where we get PACT. Okay, PACT. Okay, the first item P in PACT is the purpose of the credit facility. What is the client borrowing the money for? Okay. Secondly, the age of the client or the age of the business. Okay. So generally speaking, a younger client or middle-aged client would attract or should attract a lower interest rate than a client who is older. Okay, and that is because the older a person gets, the more risky it is to lend to them, particularly if it is an unsecured lending. Now, the opposite is true with regard to a business. The longer the business has been established and it has been a going concern for a longer period of time, so the interest rate tends to be lower. So you tend to give the businesses who've been around for a while and doing well for a while, you tend to want to give them a better rate. Okay. Whereas if the business is a startup business or a fairly new business, the interest rate would tend to be high or higher. Okay. The third thing to consider, the C in PACT, with regard to customer risk, is the age, is the collateral offered. Okay, so C is the collateral offered. So what collateral is the client offering? Is it real estate? Is it cash? Or is it something similar? You know, it might be stocks, it might be shares. Okay, so again, based on the collateral offered by the client, that would determine the interest rate. So if the client offers cash and they cash secured a loan, the interest rate tend to be lower. If, let's say, for real estate, it'll be slightly higher than cash if the client offers cash security. Okay, say in the form of a CD, term deposit. Okay, and then finally, T, the term of the facility. And again, a lot of that has to do with the client's age. So if a person is older, the term of the facility will be shorter, so the interest rate would normally be higher. Okay, if the age of the person, if the person is younger, the term tends to be longer, and so you can, you know, give a better concessionary rate to the client. Okay, so we have the overall product risk using TLC, which includes type of loan risk, liquidity risk, and customer risk. And then that last one, customer risk, we then look at that in more detail under PACT, PACT. And again, the purpose of the facility, the age of the client or the business, the collateral offered, and the term of the facility. Okay. And again, the differences would be whether or not they're business loans, consumer loans, or mortgage loans. So business loans, consumer loans, the interest rates tend to be a little higher than mortgage loans. Okay, and as I said, we'll look at this again in chapter 8, and that's on pages 40-41 when we look at PACT. Okay, now just a word of caution here, because you will recall that we you came across PAT, okay? So don't confuse PACT with PAT, okay? So PACT concerns the pricing or interest rates, okay? So PACT, as we're looking at now, concerns how loans are priced, okay? Loan pricing, primarily interest rates, whereas PAT, okay, is the loan included in the loan application. Remember when we look at the request, okay? Remember when we look at the credit application, we look at the client's request, and we said there were 3 components: the demographics, the financial information, and the request itself. And so we said in the request there was purpose, amount, and term. Okay, so PACT, P-A-C-T, is different from PAT. Okay, so let me just go back there. PAT that we're looking at now is the pricing, looking at interest rates, whereas PAT, purpose, amount, term, relates to the loan application, or specifically the loan request, the client's request. Okay. Any questions on that before we go on? I just want to reiterate. Okay, so again, to compare the two, PAT, purpose, amount, term, is the client's request. Okay, and PACT relates to the interest rates, or the, when we consider the customer, or the what do you call the client sometimes, risk. Okay, so customer or client risk. Okay, and that's it for margin, the M in Campari. Okay, and again, like I said, we will look at margin again and product pricing in chapter 8. Okay, in more detail. But for our purposes now, this is all we need to look at in terms of margin. Okay, so let's move on to purpose. Okay. And
So now
the use of the funds. Pardon?
Tonight, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I was able to hear or if you did mention going back to the previous slide. Can you go back for me?
Okay. That one?
Right. So you have, okay, there's an overall product risk using TLC. And then you're saying the categories of this is the type of loan risk, liquidity, and customer. Do you have examples of the type of loan risk, or is that something a business or bank will have to establish, I guess, the layers of the risk involved?
Okay, so so we're looking at TLC is the product. So we're looking at the product. Okay, so so for example, let's say we're looking at a car loan. Okay, so if the car loan is unsecured, let's say we only just take a salary deduction. Okay, we take the salary deduction, which is not security, by the way. Okay, it's just a form of payment. So we have a personal loan that we gave for a car. It's unsecured, but we get salary deduction. Okay, so because we have salary deduction, we may rather than saying charging the maximum of 16%, we may charge, say, 13% or 12%. Okay, and let's say, for example, our range, the interest rate range on consumer loans are anywhere from, let's say, 12% to 16%. Okay, so on car loans, let's say 12 to 16%. So because we have the salary reduction, although it's unsecured, you may charge 12% rather than 16%. Now we look at that same loan. Let's say that we do take a chattel mortgage over the car as well. So we have the salary reduction, and we also have a chattel mortgage over the car. So the car is, quote unquote, mortgaged to the bank. Okay, so the bank owns the car for the duration of the loan. Okay, so we may say, because of that, now we will probably do 10% because it is less risky.
I understand. I see
Okay.
now. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
So that one particularly will have to, like in our example, to work, we will have to seek, I guess, a manager's approval, because the risk involved, like how you said, one car may be a 10% versus they may come back and say, give them a 12% based on their, their capacity to pay or whatever it is.
Yes.
So
Now
that is
remember
dependent.
Yes. Now remember, I said from the inception that when I went up here, okay, this is the bank's profit potential and is usually set by executive management based on certain criteria. So what we're looking at is we're looking at how executive management makes those decisions. And so they will come down to, they will tell you that you can charge X amount of interest rate on a particular credit. Okay.
Yeah.
So in your, they give you policy guidelines a period. So for example, sometimes during the year, they'll do specials. So like they have like the loan thing at the mall.
Back to school.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. Or they have the thing at the mall with the car sales, the car show, whatever it is. Okay.
Right.
And so all the banks will be there. So sometimes customers can get an even better rate than 10%. You get like 7% on the car loan. Okay. But
if they sign up right there and then. Okay.
Right. So your financial institution, your executive management will send down to you, you can, for this type of loan, for this period or whatever it is, you could charge X, Y, Z.
Right. Okay. I understand now. Yes, sir. Right. Thank you.
And like you were saying, like back to school, they may have a back to school special. You come in, they'll do some special stuff, interest rate. And one of the things they may do is they may also give like backpacks to the children. They have books and pencils in it, what you call it, a PR aspect of it. Okay, so they'll have the interest rate plus they'll have a little something that you can get a little reward for coming out and taking the back to school loan. Okay, so all those things are determined at the executive management level. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to help you to understand how the decision is arrived at. Okay. So so when I talk about TLC, that's on the product. We're looking at the product. Okay. And then the second thing that you consider is the client risk. Okay. So the client risk, you break that down because client risk is part of the overall product risk. Okay, because when you look at a customer risk, you're looking at your demographics, who you really targeting. Okay, the younger people who come into the mall for the car show, blah 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 blah. What type of customers are they? Are these salary deductible people? What if they're not salary deductible, but we can take a chattel mortgage over the vehicle? What type of risk that is? And so you set an interest rate based on that. Okay, so the two main prongs that financial institutions look at executive management. They look at the product itself, and they look at the client base. Okay, and when I say the client base, I should say the potential client base. So they look at what we can, what is the public out there that we can probably get some of these different loans from. Okay, so are we going to target just government workers, or are we going to government hotel, or whatever it is? Okay. All right, so purpose is the use of the funds. Okay. And so the questions you want to ask is the purpose that, and we're on page 36 now, okay, on the top of page 36, is the purpose legal? Is the purpose sound? Is the purpose worthwhile? Okay. Now, with regards to individuals, you know, banks, we tend to move away from this, and so so even, you know, once the people could pay the loan and we get salary reduction, nowadays we don't really look to see if it's sound or worthwhile. Okay, as long as it's legal, we say, you know, go ahead. But we should be educating our client base. You know, is this really something, you know, something that you really want to get into? You know, what are your overall goals in life? You know, you're coming now to borrow money to go shopping in foreign. Okay, is there really a need for that? You know, so unless you're really going to say you're shopping for clothes for your family, let's say there was a hurricane, okay, and you lost everything, so you having to go shop either locally or abroad for clothing. Okay, that's sound, that's worthwhile. Okay, but if the person is just, you know, they don't really need the clothes, whatever it is, and they just want, you know, $5,000, $10,000 to just go on a shopping spree, you know, you should, you know, ask them to really reconsider. Okay, and that's part of developing a relationship with your client. That's where we get into that farmer A and farmer B type mentality. Okay, what, you know, do you own a piece of property now? Do you own a house now? Are you renting? Okay, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve in life? Short term, mid term, long term, right? And so, you know, you may say, hey, okay, I know you have this need now. Maybe you need to just sit on that need for right now, have some delayed satisfaction, and work on this area to say get enough money to do a down payment on a piece of property. Once you get your property and, you know, you start working your goals and you start achieving your goals, then you can start looking at those different things. Or it might be, hey, okay, instead of going and just on any shopping spree, you know, use this $5,000-$10,000 to get into a business venture. You know, what type of business you think you would want to get into as a side business, apart from what you're doing on your regular job. Okay, so those are some things that we should be trying to educate and encourage our clients to do, other than just them keep coming in and getting loans, because at some point in time they're not going to have any disposable income to satisfy additional lending. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to be able to be the farmer B to your clients, where you feed them properly, where you prepare them so that you have an ongoing and a perpetual almost supply of customer base that you can continue to lend to and provide other products and services too, which may not be, credit facilities, but, say for example, if they start a business, they may need payroll facilities. So you may be able to offer payroll facilities. So while that is not a part of the credit side of it, you've now caused business to go to another area of your financial institution. Okay. So for individuals to purchase an asset, it is not speculative. So for example, if they come to you, say they want $3,000 to go to one of the numbers houses, I would not, as a lending institution, lend them money for that. Okay, that's speculative. Okay. With regards to businesses, you'll want to lend them for working capital, for fixed assets such as plant, machinery, premises, and it might be even for expansion of the businesses. So they may want to expand the existing, the size of the existing building, or they may want to set up a second shops elsewhere on the island or in another family island. Okay, so is it legal, sound, worthwhile? Secondly, is there a reasonable purpose and term? Okay, and I have a little chart here, and I want us to go through this. Okay, and what I want you to tell me, we have a purpose term relationship. This actually is from, chapter 8, page 42, but we're going to look at it now because I think it will benefit us now. Okay, so we in column 1 we have the purpose, and then column 2 we have the financing method. What would be the preferred financing method? Should we finance that purpose via mortgage, or should we finance it via consumer loan or personal loan? So the first one, wedding.
Consumer.
Consumer.
Well, actually, Mr. Nordich, my belief is if you have to go to the bank to borrow to get married, then you shouldn't be getting married. I mean, that's just my personal belief. You're already starting your reunion in debt.
Yes. I agree.
So I would say no. I would say no category.
No category.
Other.
I mean, and again, everybody, please forgive me. That's just my own personal belief.
No, but you may say that's your personal belief, but that is shared by many banks.
Yeah.
And there's a time when financial institutions would not lend for weddings. But like I said, the way things have evolved now, okay? Because remember we said, is it legal? Well, that's legal. Is it sound? And is it worthwhile? So to me, it may be legal, but it is not really a sound purpose. It's not a worthwhile purpose.
Yes, agreed.
Okay? Or it may be worthwhile, okay, because you get married, okay, and marriage is honorable, okay, so they say, okay, but it may not be a sound, okay, but then again, you could even question worthwhile, okay, because we've had cases where people have gotten married and then divorced in a year or less, and if that loan isn't in both partners' names, one person is having a 3, 5, 7 year loan to pay off, and I've seen that happen with both males and females, where the males have come in and gotten the wedding loan, or the female has come and gotten the wedding loan, and they've divorced or separated, and only one person was on it, or 2 people may have been on it, but only one of them have this. We have the salary deduction only on one, and so okay. But nowadays, if we could get salary reduction, we do consumer loans, right? So let's put that in consumer. Okay. Certainly,
Yes.
I wouldn't do a mortgage.
Definitely.
Okay. And for wedding, if you could limit that to about a year, certainly not longer than 3 years. You know, when I considered wedding, when I considered as a credit underwriter, when wedding loans came to me, I really had to I really had to bite my teeth very hard on it, because I had a severe difficulty approving a wedding loan for more than a year. Okay, but because the financial institution would allow it for a longer period of time, say up to 3 years, you know, I had to be guided by the bank's policies and guidelines. You know, but it's one of those things. Okay, so home improvement.
Mortgage? Or
That's
I would
that.
say
That
mortgage.
can't be both. If I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Depends
I would
on the
say
amount,
both.
eh?
It could be
Depends.
it could be
Yeah.
both.
It can be both. Yeah.
It could be both based on the amount,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or and/or the term required.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So, what about investment?
I would say consumer.
Consumer.
Okay. Now, I deliberately didn't put
What
what
type?
type of investment here,
Exactly.
but investment, just for our discussion, investment could be if someone wants to invest in stocks, shares, bonds, government treasury bills, or mutual funds. An investment could also be business. It could be duplex, triplex, an investment property.
Okay.
So both
Okay.
too.
All
Okay.
right. So having said that, what do you think?
Well, having
It can be
said that,
both
I
as
would say
well.
then both.
Both.
Both. Okay. So if they're coming for bond, stock, shares, that kind of stuff,
That'll be consumer.
Mm-hmm.
it'll be on the consumer side. And if they want to get like a duplex, triplex,
Right.
or some other type of, a condo that they're going to rent out, they'll be on the investment side, on the mortgage side, usually. Okay. Automobile,
Consumer.
definitely consumer. Although some of the price of some of those cars, I went to the car show last year. I went to the car show last year, and I saw like some $100 and some $1,000 for some of them cars.
That's the BMWs.
Oh.
Yeah, them Mercedes and things.
Mercedes.
Them E-Class and stuff like that. They them 300 and 350E and CLS and whatever.
Mr. Norris sound like one of them is yours.
Let me tell you.
You know that to the T.
That's where my heart is. But I have a $3,000 car, and when people scratch that, I split. I split with them. So I say I would have to hire a personal security guard to stand by that car, or a driver, right? Who is an off-duty police officer, so that make sure that nobody bump into my car, scratch my car.
Man.
So if I can afford a $110,000 car, I can afford a driver.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So, alrighty. So education, college.
Consumer.
Consumer. Sometimes you may find people mortgaging their houses.
Their homes, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. So you could do both.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Nordich, wouldn't that be the same thing for auto? Some people is used to collateral.
Yeah, but see, for consumer, where you have the car has a diminishing value. It does not have a appreciating value. It has a depreciating value. I wouldn't
But
do
why
I would do a mortgage over it.
Well, we don't do mortgages.
People do it. People do it, but I wouldn't, particularly over your residence. If you have an extra residential, I mean, if you have an extra lot, undeveloped lot somewhere, maybe, you know, but only in exceptional circumstances, I would do a mortgage for an auto.
And so then why do we do mortgages over education?
Well, because education is something that is intangible. And so, for example, the person who's going to be an engineer, right, or a doctor, right, where the fees are like, you know, $50,000 and $100,000 and that kind of thing. Okay, it may require mortgaging a piece of real estate. Okay, and the idea is, you know, at the end, when the person comes back, you know, in time, medium to long term, and in some cases short term, they will be able to help the person who mortgaged it off, if it isn't them, the person who mortgaged the property, to pay it off rather quickly. Because we have a number of doctors who come back, for example, doctors who come back and they work for government, but they also do private practice, say at doctor's hospital, or team up with some other seasoned doctor. So they have basically two sets of incomes, you know. And I've known some who've, you know, in 5 years or a little under 5 years, they've actually gotten consultants at PMH, consultancy. So, you know, that's like $60,000, $75,000 right there. Bam.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then in the case of engineers, even if they don't return and they get paid a whole bunch of money, you know, particularly IT engineers, they start around in the six figures, you know, over $100,000. So, so the extent to which they, you know, would be able to assist the parents or guardian or whoever it was who mortgaged. Okay, so college education, consumer or mortgage. Okay, debt consolidation.
Consumer.
Consumer, yes. What about mortgage? People who would you consider debt consolidation for someone who has a mortgage, and under what circumstances?
I guess if they want to consolidate, if they have maybe further charge or a second mortgage and they want to consolidate everything under one umbrella.
Yeah, or it could be a person who, you know, because of reduced income or a loss of income from one party, they now can't service their mortgage and their consumer debt.
Right.
So if you consolidate everything into one, under the mortgage, and because the mortgage is normally a lower interest rate, although it's a longer period of time.
Yes.
So you may do a debt consolidation, including under a mortgage term. Okay. The client would have to ensure that your financial institution, let's say, for example, the second person gets reemployed, or their income goes back up. Okay. They would have to ensure that there's no penalty for prepayments or early repayment, and that way they can still pay off the mortgage loan, say in a consumer loan time period. So let's say they had to get the debt consolidation over 15 years, okay, but they had a car loan that was going to be paid off in about 5 or 7 years. They can still then say, okay, since this person is now working again, we'll increase our loan payments on this debt consolidation mortgage so that it'll be paid off in 7 years as opposed to 15 years. Okay, but not all of our financial institutions, not all of us allow early repayment or principal lump sum payments. Sometimes we have, well, I think everyone has penalty clauses, but not all the banks exercise the penalty clauses. Okay, only under certain circumstances, banks may. So let's say, for example, they have everybody rushing to pay off their loan to go to a competitor. You may find that ABC Bank may say, okay, we're going to now enforce the penalty clause for early payments or principal payments or repayments. Okay. All right. What about medical?
Consumer.
I would say consumer. Although I've known some people to do mortgage, I tend to discourage doing it by mortgage, particularly if the medical is for someone who is not the owner of the property. So someone comes and they say they're doing it for their mother, and the mother's terminally ill. This may sound cold, right? But let's say that the parent, the mother, dies. Okay, you still have that that mortgage to pay, and especially if the parent dies and they don't have sufficient life insurance coverage, or let's say they, there's you and a couple other siblings, but you're the sibling who took on the mortgage, but the parent leave whatever they have to the other siblings, and I've seen that happen. Okay, the person who's done all for the ma and the pa, they get little or nothing, and the rascals who ain't do nothing, they get all the goodies from the parent. So I tend to discourage medical. Now, if the person comes and says it's their husband or their wife, or even a child, I would consider a mortgage as a lender. But when you start getting out to a parent or some brother, sister, I discourage clients from doing a mortgage for medical. Okay. Business
But
start.
that's giving your customers, Mr. Knowledge, good sound financial advice. Some
Yes, it
people will
is.
just take upon them and do it.
Yes, yeah. So you have to see, and then what we have to understand is, you may say, well, I'm not going to get this business, right? You may say, hey, when I can get this more, I can get this business. But what you can find happening is when that customer goes, and they may be vexed because they say, I need this now to get this person, But sometimes they can come back to you and they say, something? My mommy or my daddy died and he didn't leave me a penny, or he only left so and so, or he left me with my brother or my sister,
Yes,
and they acting up. Okay, so I can't even benefit from that property because now I got to deal with them because daddy leave the property to me and them. Okay, so then they'll come back to you and they'll say, thank you very much, and then they'll tell other people, and then you'll find other people coming to you because they'll say, I could trust Mrs. So-and-so, I could trust Miss So-and-so, I could trust Mrs. So-and-so. Okay, they're looking out for my best interest. And then of course, you have to be on the service delivery side, that when the application is taken, that you do it timely. And when it comes down to the drawdown, that you ensure that the customer service aspect of it is also delivered well. Okay, so not just in the advice, but also in the service delivery. And then you'll find that you don't have to market as hard as someone who doesn't do those things. Okay. So, any other questions, comments before we look at medical?
No.
I mean, business startup. Okay, so business startup.
Both?
I'm not sure if that could be both or really just consumer.
Or just consumer. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Consumer.
Okay. With most lenders, you're really looking at on consumer. Okay, because when it gets when it gets larger, you're looking at more specialized lending. Like like someone would start a business on the size of, say, a Kelly's, okay, a Kelly's home center, or a hotel, or a restaurant business. So that's a little bit more specialized. And so what you'll find is that your financial institution will have lenders who will specialize in that. So business loans would kind of like have its own department. Okay, and that would come under. But for the general public that we normally would deal with, it would be a consumer loan. Okay, so for business startup, consumer loan. All right, and now this wonderful one that we talked about earlier, shopping.
Consumer.
Consumer.
Definitely consumer if your financial institution allows it. Vacation.
Consumer.
Consumer. Okay. School fees. That's like, our local high schools and junior high schools and primary schools. School fees.
Consumer.
Consumer.
Consumer. Okay.
Consumer, yeah.
Okay. House.
Definitely.
Mortgage.
Mortgage.
Alrighty. Now, unless you're super wealthy, you could do a consumer loan.
I serious.
You can, you're making $250,000, you might be able to do a mortgage, on a consumer loan, but the interest rate is higher, So, okay, so there you have it. All right. All right. So that takes care of purpose. So let's look at amount. Okay. And so amount, we have one blank to fill in there. So, but the first point is the amount too much or too little? Is it realistic? Okay. Normally we could overcome this because we ask for proof of, so when they come to us and they say they want to borrow money to do such and such, we ask for proof. So we ask for a performer invoice, for an estimate, that kind of thing. So if they want to purchase a car, they go and they get a performer invoice from the car dealership, or they will bring in a sales agreement if it is a used car. They're buying from an individual. Okay. So in that vein, we will know if it's too much or too little. So it's pretty easy to determine that nowadays. The only other thing is if someone comes to you and say, I have a shop, I have a little shop on the side, a little corner shop, and I want $5,000 to put stock in it. Okay. You may find them come back to you, man, I really needed $10,000, or I need another $2,500 cleared off the lot, off the dock. Okay. So so some of the questions to alleviate that kind of thing is, if they say they want $5,000 for stock, is that your landed price? Are they purchasing locally, or are they bringing it from abroad? Does the 5,000 include customs, VAT, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, so it's pretty easy to overcome that hurdle. Question number one. Okay. Question number two, to fill in the blank, is the borrower making a contribution? Let's say it's saying borrowing, but it should be borrower. Is the borrower making a contribution? Okay. And there were several years ago, the central bank on consumer loans from time to time was saying what the minimum contribution ought to have been. And I think at one point in time they had said they need to make a minimum of 10% contribution on consumer loans. But again, nowadays, because of salary deductions, we end up in any event, we find ways we find ways to get around it in any event and end up giving the customers 100% financing. Okay, so is the borrower making a contribution? Okay, the third point, with regard to individuals, apart from debt service ratios, sometimes you may find lenders will use a multiplier of income as a rough guide to determine the maximum a person can borrow. Okay, what does that mean? A multiplier of income as a rough guide to determine the maximum a person can borrow. Simply, they may say the most you can borrow is 2 times your income, or 3 times your income, or 4 times your income. Okay, so so for consumer loans, let's say they may say you can't borrow more than 3 times your monthly income or your annual income. Okay, or mortgages no more than 4 times your annual income. Okay, so that's what a multiplier of income means. Okay, for businesses, apart from financial ratios, as a rough guideline, lenders may lend less than the net worth of the company or business. Okay, so if the company has net worth of $250,000, and the lender may say we're not prepared to lend you more than $250,000. Okay, and the reason for that is with net worth. Remember now, the net worth is the assets minus the liabilities. Remember that? Okay, so the net worth. So the reason that lenders would say that is that if the business fails, there's sufficient net worth in the company that we can look to liquidate the loan. Okay. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those are the four questions. Is it too much or too little? Is the borrower making a contribution? That is a down payment. Is the individual, sometimes they use a multiplier of income. With a business, not lending more than the net worth. Okay, so that takes us with amount. We now look at repayment. Okay, and there are 4 things we want to consider underpayment. Okay, and one of which there's a blank. So the term, is the term consistent with the purpose of the security pledged? What is meant by that? What do you think it is meant by that? Is the term consistent with the purpose and security pledged? That is the purpose of the loan and the security pledged.
I'm finding difficult putting it in words, but what I can say is that let's compare it to if it was a consumer loan. You don't want to give somebody 15, 20 years on a, let's say, $10,000 or $7,000 loan. You want to make sure that the term is in line with what the client is receiving, and it isn't something far-fetched.
You're quite right. Quite right. Okay. So so for the term, so let's say if they get in a car and the car is the collateral, okay, you don't want to and if it's a brand new car, okay, and so if you look through your policy manual, it'll say for new cars you have a longer term to pay for new cars, but for used cars a shorter period of time. Okay, and the reason for that is because you have that diminishing value on the car. The car is what we call a consumer durable. Okay, so consumer durables, they lose value over time. Okay, so if the car is your primary security, excuse me, then you don't want to lend for a period longer than how long that car is going to survive. Because if after 7 years the car is no more good, it can't work anymore, the client is going to need to now come back to you to borrow for another car. But if you've loaned them for 10 or 15 years, you still have 3 to 8 years left in that term, or at least the client has. Okay, so you're quite right. Is it consistent with the purpose and the security pledged? Okay. The second point is the payment amount. What is the payment amount? Okay, and we've so the repayment includes the term is consistent with the purpose and security pledge, and repayment is the payment amount. What is the payment amount? Okay. We'll get to that on point number 4, talking about a little bit more about the repayment terms. Okay, but the payment amount is, can the client afford that payment? And we've already covered that in that part of it when we're looking at debt service ratios, etc. Okay, so that's the primary aspect of the payment amount, that there is a payment amount, and 2, the client can afford that payment amount. 3 is the source of repayment. You must identify the source of repayment. Okay, so it's not just good to have a payment amount or repayment amount. You must have a clearly identified source, whether it's salaried income, rental income, business income, dividend income, commission income, etc. Okay. And then fourthly, and you see me have the NBB. Okay. Do you know what NB means? What does NB stand for? When you see NB, anyone knows?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Nope. Nobody knows.
No, buggy. What's that?
You came across that in school? NB? Note well?
What's
Note
that? I know NB, but not NBB.
Okay,
That's the NB.
NB. Anyone knows
Note
what
well.
NB is? Note well, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
but what is NBB? Note well.
Yes, very perceptive. Okay, and then you see, it's in big letters, bigger than the rest of the type, right? So NBB, note well. Okay, comes from Latin, meaning the Latin.
Oh, so that's what that means for you, Mr. Knowledge? Note well.
Well, I'm putting nota buena. I'm putting okay. I'm getting like I'm getting like our good friend with oh gracious, who was the senator who talked about the tree meats? Rodney Munker. I'm getting like Rodney Munker. I created. Okay, so NBB, note well. Okay, so some types of lending have disciplined repayment programs. That's what should be in that blank. Disciplined repayment programs, while others do not. Okay, so to help us understand what we mean by disciplined repayment programs, if we look at mortgage loans or personal loans and business loans, they have repayment programs. Okay, so there'll be a stated payment amount. Going back to point number 2, there'll be a stated payment amount. Okay, so whenever you issue a personal loan, a mortgage loan or real estate loan, if you call it that, or a business loan, they have repayment programs. So you repay X amount of dollars at X amount of interest over a certain period of time. Okay, so they have a disciplined repayment program. Okay, whereas overdrafts and credit cards do not have a disciplined repayment program. Okay, overdrafts, it's it fluctuates as and when the client's salary comes in. you expect it to dip into credit at some point in time. When the clients, let's say that you grant it to a client, let's say a customer needs a $1,000 overdraft to take care of some monthly expenses, but the expenses occur before their payday. So let's say the expenses occur on the 20th, but they don't get paid until the 28th. So you may offer them an overdraft facility of $1,000. So when their salary comes in, let's say the salary is $2,500. When that comes in on the 28th, it takes the account back into credit. So they'll now have $1,500 credit because 1,000 of it, 1,000 of the 2,500 has gone to eliminate the overdraft amount. And so of the 2,500 that was deposited to the account, they now have access to the 1,500. And so then they do whatever they need to do, save whatever, just pay extra bills or whatever it is with the $1,500. Okay. So there's no set repayment. There's nothing like $100 a month, $250 a month. Same thing with credit cards. Credit cards, there's no set payment. The financial institutions are really looking for the minimum payment. Okay, and the minimum payment is based on what the outstanding loan balance, the outstanding credit card balance is. Okay, so for a $2,000 credit card, for a credit card that has a $2,000 limit, but if it has a $1,000 balance, then they don't really only expect you to pay $50. Okay, 5% of the balance. Okay, and then next month it can be higher or lower depending on what the balance is. Okay, it's only when we're doing DSRs that we assign a set payment amount based on the credit limit. Okay, but that is not a repayment program for the client. That's just for our purposes of assessing the credit. Okay, so those are two different things. Okay, so overdrafts and credit cards do not have repayment programs. Okay, so bear that in mind. Alrighty. Any questions on that?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So let's get to I, insurance, which is our collateral security pledged. Okay. Insurance, our collateral security pledged. So again, we have about 5 points. Yeah, 5 points to consider on this. So the first one is, does the client have title to the asset? That is, do they own it? Is it encumbered? And encumbered means held by somebody else. Okay, so those are some questions you need to ask yourself. Does the client have title to the asset? Do they own it? So when the customer comes to you, let's say for mortgage, one of the things that they have to be able to prove is that they actually own the property that they're mortgaging. Okay, so if they're coming to you to buy a car and you're holding the car, well, you'll know that they own the car because you'll get the documentation showing that the pro forma invoice is in the name, and then eventually you'll get a copy of the certificate of title that is issued by the road traffic department, and also the car insurance, copy of the car insurance certificate. All right. The next point is the 4 qualities of good collateral security. Okay, and we can look at them in the next slide. Okay, so the first one is easy to acquire good title. Okay, and that means, is the ownership easily transferable? It's not convoluted. Okay, so again, this goes back to that question: does the client have title to the asset? Do they own it? Is it incumbent? So the first question is it easy for us to acquire good title? Alrighty, and we know that with regard to chattel mortgages, vehicles, vehicles, uh, where it's being purchased. Again, we say we can fairly easily ascertain that. Although sometimes people may bring a car to you that is financed by another financial institution, and unfortunately, you may not get to know that until you try going to repossess the car. Okay, and then you find out that, oh, this is held by XYZ Bank as well. Okay, because normally you don't do title searches on customers for consumer loan. Okay, or you may find out if you go to register the chattel mortgage at the registry, only to find out that, hey, you can't register this because there's already an outstanding chattel mortgage on this car. So then you'll have to go back to the client, and it could be just a case where it may have been financed by the other company, but they never got a satisfaction of the chattel mortgage. It's paid off from the other financial institution, but they never got a satisfaction of chattel mortgage. Or it could be, to your horror, to discover that it is still subject to a loan at another financial institution, right? So is it easy to acquire a good title? And with a mortgage, of course, you don't have to go through an attorney. They do a title search on it, and they determine if it is a good title. If it is not, they'll come back to you. You do not draw down funds until you get a report of a good title from the lawyer. So the only thing that is really lost is some time, and if the client cannot complete that transaction, you have taken fees for the loan, and so they may forfeit the fees. So the bank still makes a little something off a mortgage loan that could not go through because of bad title. All right. So the second point is it easy to value? All right. So with real estate pledge as collateral security, you can get an appraiser to do an appraisal, a real estate appraisal on it. For cars, you can check with insurance. Sometimes financial institutions have their own little red books or blue books of value, or you can just scan the newspapers or social media and see what other cars are, similar cars are being sold for to determine the value. Well, like I said, you can check with an insurance company. They may be able to tell you the value if you have a relationship with someone there. So vehicles, if they're brand new, of course, you have the quote from the car dealership. So there's no question about the value there. Okay, so the difficulty comes in when you're dealing with shares, stocks, bonds, those kind of things, because they fluctuate on a regular basis. They get on a daily basis, a weekly basis. Even here in the Bahamas, our money and capital market is fairly active, and the values can change from week to week of our commodities that are traded. So normally you'll find for shares or bonds and stock certificates, you'll find that financial institutions, for the most part, tend to stay away from taking them, or they use very little of the value. So, for example, if a stock is worth $100, they may say, "Well, we will not use more than 50% of the value of it." Okay, so they'll say, "We only use $50 of that." So, if you have $10,000 worth, if you have $10,000 worth of shares or stocks or bonds, the financial institution will probably lend you not more than, will not lend a person more than say $5,000 against it, and that's because the value can fluctuate from day to day, and financial institutions don't want to be caught where they've lent say $8,000 against 10,000, and then the value dips to say $7,000. So now they have an unprotected position of $1,000. Okay, being the difference between the 8,000 they've lent and the 7,000 new value of the shares. Okay, so again, as noted in the book, it says, "What is the fair market value for the asset? How much is it worth?" And you see there, LPV and LPC. We'll be looking at that. I think it's in chapter 8. Okay. So the loan as a percentage of the value, or the loan as a percentage of cost. And of course, in terms of easy to value, you want to know that it's also marketable. So not any and every stock, bond, share, because there are some that are publicly traded in our local money and capital markets. But some of them, the values haven't moved for ages. Okay, so you would want to watch out for that. And related to that is the next point: does it have stable value? Okay, is it appreciating, or is it depreciating in value, or is it steady? Okay, if it has a steady value, but being traded actively, you could consider it. But if it has depreciating value, you may want to stay away from taking it as a security. That is related to stocks, bonds, shares. If it's appreciating and it has a track record of appreciating, then you may want to look at it. Okay. And then the fourth one, easy to realize if necessary. Okay. And what that means is, how easily can it be converted into cash? So if this loan goes south, how quickly can I as a banker get my money out of it? Is there a market for this particular collateral security that is pledged? Okay, so if it's cash, no problem. You got your certificate, the deposit, bram. It's just a matter of liquidating it. If it's real estate, it may take a little while to sell, but you should get your money back. If it's a car, you're at the mercy of whether or not the person took good care of the car. So it may not have depreciated in line with normal depreciation. It may have depreciated at a faster rate because the customer beat up the car. Okay, in Bayman vernacular. Okay. Right. So we will look at the different collateral types and related documents in more detail in chapter 8. Okay. All right. Okay, so point number 3, let's look at point number 3. Sorry, any questions on that before I move on? To point number 3?
No,
No? Okay.
No,
So,
sir.
okay, so point 3, it says banks, excuse me, we're on top of page 37. Top of page 37. Banks may provide unsecured lending to individuals for small amounts, but for larger amounts, they may take security, such as real estate, cash, and cash meaning CDs, and to a lesser extent, stocks, shares, bonds. Okay, bonds are a little bit more secure than stocks and shares. Treasury bills, our treasury bills here in the Bahamas are fairly solid because they are government backed, government secured. So you'll find that if a client has sufficient, a good number of them, a financial institution may take a lien over a client's treasury bills or government registered stock. Okay. Point number 4. This is the first blank. For sole traders or sole proprietors, the personal collateral security often has to be taken from the proprietor himself or herself. Okay, so if you're taking collateral from a proprietor, it has to be owned by them. Very seldom will you have somebody proxying for them. Okay, and point number 5, for limited companies or corporations, the bank may take a debenture, which will cover all the assets of a business. A debenture is a type of charge document. Okay, so a debenture is kind of like a chattel mortgage, a mortgage, a charge, a lien. Okay, and again, we will look at that in more detail in chapter 8. Okay, so any questions on that?
no, sir.
Okay, so that brings us to conclusion of CAMPARI. Character, ability, margin, purpose, amount, repayment, term, and insurance. Right. So let's take a quick look at the credit seize method. Okay. So the credit seize method, we have character, which is the same as the first letter in CAMPARI, right? Okay. That's where you know your customer, his background, his history, and you use this knowledge to assess the risk. Okay. You have capacity or capability, which is similar to ability in CAMPARI. Okay, and that's the client's ability to meet payments. Then you have cash flow. That is similar to ability in CAMPARI, but is more associated with businesses. Okay, so it's the business's ability to meet payments. And some of the questions you would want to ask is the income consistent? Can obligations, that is bills, be met when they fall due on the business side? Okay, then we have capital or contribution. Okay, capital is normally reserved for business. Okay, so what capital has the business put in to the credit, the loan application, and contribution or down payment is really on the individual side, the consumer, individual. Okay, so capital is more for the business, contribution or down payment is what we refer to on the individual side. Collateral That is the same as the last item we just covered, insurance. Okay, that is the security pledged and its quality. Conditions. A, conditions, you want to consider any economic conditions that could affect a borrower's ability to repay, such as unemployment, seasonal work. And then B, conditions also refers to any special or additional conditions that may be applied by the lender to reduce the risk. Okay, and those special conditions or additional conditions may be added either to compensate for economic conditions, as mentioned in A above, okay, or based on the overall assessment of the strength of the borrower, okay. So, so the conditions, special or additional conditions may be applied either to compensate for economic conditions or based on the overall assessment of the strength of the borrower himself or if it's a company. Okay. Credit history, we already covered that as part of character. Okay, previously, so credit history. But you see in credit Cs, they've added that as a separate item. Okay, so credit Cs, how the client paid in the past is a good predictor of how he or she will pay going forward. If the credit history is poor, get just or decline it. Okay. Then we have connections, such as connections we will consider people of influence, such as the governor of the central bank. Okay, so the governor of the central bank, we will tend not to give him too much of a hard time in doing the loan application, as we would do, say, if I were to come to you for a loan application, or, the ordinary person off the street, you definitely put me under more scrutiny than you would put the governor of the central bank. Okay, a person of connection could also be considered, let's say, the human resource manager of a large corporation. Or let's say take Atlantis. In the good times of tourism, let's say the human resources manager from Atlantis came to you to borrow. Okay, you would tend to try to give them a good preferential rate or whatnot, because or say the owner of the owner of a company came to you for car loan. Okay, you want to give them a preferential rate and you want to deal with the loan as quickly as possible, because the idea is that the owner of that company or the HR manager will go back and they will probably send their employees to you. Okay, so because of that connection, okay, in bringing additional business to your financial institution, that is something that you need to consider. Okay, that connection person. All right. Then of course there's common sense, the last C. Okay, and what I've done is, for the most part, I've put these alphabetically with the exception of character. Okay, so then you have common sense. Okay, A, it involves the lender taking a step back to look at all the information presented and to ask himself or herself the question, does this loan application make sense? Okay, and B, does the borrower demonstrate an ability to make wise decisions? Okay, are they using common sense? Okay, so that pretty much covers the credit C's method. However, what I want us to do is I want us to consider there are some under the credit C's. Under the credit C's, there are some of these C's that relate to assessment of the loan application. Okay, and there are some that relate to structuring. Okay, when I'm talking about structuring, that is like the interest rate, assessing the interest rate, collateral security, that kind of thing. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna put this on the next screen. Okay, and you should have enough space in your book to insert these things in blue. Okay, so to the top, on page 37, it says, list and describe the C's of credit. There are many, and a few of the more important ones are dealt with here. There's a space between that and character. You see that? Everyone sees
Check it
that
right now.
space?
Check it right now, Mr. Knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, so in that space, put A equals assessment, semicolon, S equals structuring. A equals assessment, S equals structuring. Okay.
Where is this, Mr. Knowledge?
Mr. Knowledge, you say page 37, right?
Page 37, between just above character, where it starts character under the credit C's. And where it says
Yes.
list and describe the credit C's.
Oh,
So between that beginning paragraph and the word character, there's a space, there's sufficient space there. Put A equals assessment and semicolon, S equals structuring. And structuring, we've covered assessment, okay, in Campari. And structuring we'll cover under, well, we've done some of it under Campari, but in a better, more detail, we will deal with it in chapter 8. Okay. So you've done that. You've put assessment and structuring.
Yes.
Okay. Now what I want you to do is on the screen, you'll see next to in front of each one of those, I have a letter. So the first three, they're A.
Mm-hmm.
The second three is S.
Yes.
And the last three are A. So what that means is character is an assessment. Capacity, capability is assessment. Cash flow is assessment. Credit history is assessment. Connections is assessment. Common sense is assessment. And then the three items that are structuring, related to structuring, are capital or contribution, collateral, and conditions. Okay, so that's what those letters next to them mean. Okay, so A for assessment, S for structuring. Now, if you haven't quite finished that, then you can finish that when you get the when you get the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, because I want to look at the big three and end the class with the big three. Okay, what I call it the big three. Okay, so you will recall that when we first started talking about Campari, and I was saying that there were different methods. There's a Campari method, there's a credit C's method, and then I mentioned some others. You may recall I said Papers, Parsons, and there's some other ones, you know, and all that happens, you know, and I remember I compared them to say people who talk about this diet, the next diet, you know, the 5 steps of losing weight, the 10 steps to losing weight, or whatever it is. Okay, when we're looking at credit assessment, there are 3 key, and you may recall me saying this, they are, regardless of what the method is, it boils down to just 3 key areas that you need to look at. 3 key areas. Okay, character, under Campari, ability or capacity, and collateral or insurance. Okay, 2 of them related to assessment, and 1 of them relates to structuring. Okay, so the first 2 are assessments, and the third one is structuring, related to structuring. Okay, so I'm gonna go to that right now. Okay, and I call it the big 3. Okay, so the first one is character under Campari, and also it is the same thing, character under credit Cs. Those are the 2 methods that we are looking at in this course. Okay, and you see I put that in blue. Okay, and the reason I put that in blue is because they normally you're talking about character, you're talking about someone who is true blue. Okay, so character in both Campari and credit Cs, true blue. Ability or capacity. Ability under Campari, capacity or capability under credit Cs. And that I put in green because that involves money. And in America, they call money the mean green. Okay? So there you have your fella there running with his bunch of money in his trolley, his mean green in his trolley. So that's ability under Campari, capacity or capability under credit Cs. Okay? And the third, as I mentioned, is insurance, or insurance under Campari, collateral under credit Cs. Okay, I put that supposed to be gold. Okay, that's your pot of gold. Okay, in case something go wrong, you got your backup plan. Okay, so there's character and character, there's ability and capacity, there's insurance and collateral. Those 3. That's your big 3. Okay, so I've extracted the 3 main ones out of character, and the 3 main ones out of, the 3 main ones out of Campari, and the 3 main ones out of credit Cs. Okay. And if you wish, you can turn to page 38, because that's where we will be looking, and that's where okay. So it says to the top, when we consider both Campari and credit Cs method of credit assessment, there are 3 key factors that are common to both, and are arguably the most important 3 assessment factors. Okay, so if you, in doing a loan, if you do character and ability and insurance, or character, capacity, and collateral, you should be able to do a pretty good loan just using those 3. Okay, and in fact, I'm going to take it a step further. If you've done character correctly, and if you've done ability or capacity correctly, you should be able to approve a loan or decline a loan based on just the character and the ability or capacity of the individual without any reference to insurance or collateral. Okay, so just to recap a little bit of going back to the character, what are some of the key components of character? Okay, employment history, credit history, net worth. Again, I put those in blue, true blue. Okay, what are some of the attributes of ability or capacity, capability? Debt servicing and total debt service ratio calculations. Secondly, income confirmation and calculations. And we've looked at those. Again, I put those in green. And then thirdly, The key to insurance or collateral is the 4 qualities of good collateral. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at our chart on the top of page 38 in a little bit more detail. Okay. So we have several columns there. The first column itemizes the 3 key factors, 1, 2, 3. The next column is the comparative factors. The second is the credit C's for the same 3 factors. The third column is the main thought, and the main thought behind each of those for comparative or credit C's. And that fifth column there, explanation, explains the main thought behind the key item, the key factor. Okay, so we look in this instance, we're looking at character first. Okay, so the main thought behind character is, will this customer pay? Okay, this is the will pay. Okay, and the explanation is the willingness and propensity to pay. That is, this person has met previous obligations and is meeting the current ones. This is evidence of good character. Okay. Second one, ability or capacity or capability. Can, when we're considering that, we're considering, can the person pay? Can they pay? Okay. The explanation, does the person or the business have the financial resources to pay? That is the ability, capacity, or capability. Okay. And then thirdly, insurance or collateral. That is your backup plan. Okay. What if the client won't or can't pay? That's the main thought, won't or can't pay. So the client either refuses to pay although he or she or the business has resources, or they simply now cannot pay due to a change in financial situation, such as a job loss. In either case, the bank will rely upon the asset pledge as security for the loan in order to get its money back. Okay, so at some point in time, sooner or later, if whether the client cannot pay or won't pay, the bank will have to make a decision to realize on their security or dispose of their security and get their money back out of it. Okay. Any questions on that before we move on?
No question, but Mr. Knowledge, something like this showed up on the mock exam, didn't it?
No, it shouldn't be.
Yes, something like this showed up on the exam.
Showed up for sure, and I was kind of.
June 1st.
Yeah, something like this.
They show up on the exam.
Multiple choice questions.
Yes. So if we didn't get this right, Mr. Knowledge, so that means you can give us a point.
I just left
All right.
the office.
Okay, I would check to see what
It was at least 2 to 3 questions actually.
Yeah, it was actually asking about this.
Yes.
I like.
Character, ability, and stuff like that.
Okay, all right. I'll when I get the scripts, I'll see what exam they printed. But it shouldn't have been the mock exam.
The interim.
Not the mock, the midterm exam had this, not the mock. The midterm had this question, and we understood the fact that we discussed ability, but not to this extent, whereas we understood the difference between can, will pay, won't, or can pay. Not categorize or explain to that extent. I mean, you know.
Okay, so all right, so they downloaded the wrong midterm exam. Okay, all right, I'll resolve it. It's easily resolvable. No problem. When I get the scripts tomorrow, if that is the case, we just eliminate those questions. Eliminate any question that. Well, let me look to see what.
Okay, Mr. Norwich, how about if we got those questions right, and we got something else wrong, you could swap it.
No.
That's a real negotiator now.
Let me look to see what. Because I'm collecting the scripts tomorrow.
Well, at least I tried.
So once I look at the scripts, I will be able to determine. I would look at it and I'll take it from there. Okay. So.
Alrighty.
But you won't be at a disadvantage.
Okay.
Okay. You have my guarantee on that. You won't be at a disadvantage.
Awesome.
Okay. So these things happen, and especially we doing Zoom, and so normally when we're doing face to face, I'm at the institute fairly often, and I haven't been to the institute now for months. Okay, so I'm there often. So once the exams, I send the exam. They told me they printed the exam. I would go there and I would check it and all that sort of stuff before the exam, and because I'm there, more frequently. But like I said, because of the current circumstances, I don't go there, on a weekly basis like I would, or even on almost 2 or 3 times a week like I used to.
Okay.
But that's easily resolvable. Don't worry about that. Okay, so to lend or not to lend. Okay, so here's some combinations, and we have four combinations. If the person has good character, they have good capacity, and they have good collateral security, should we lend to them?
Yes.
Yes.
Not insurance.
Okay. If they have good character and good capacity, should we lend? But they don't have collateral security, should we lend to them?
Yes, but some things aren't held as collateral.
Well, we're lending the customers now based on.
Depends on how much they ask it
We're
for.
lending the customers now based on salary deduction, which is not even a collateral security.
Yeah.
So, which is
I say yeah.
So we're lending now based on character and capacity.
Yeah, we are. Salary deduction, wage assignment.
And even at that, character to less degree. Because as long as we can get salary deduction, okay. So that's a yes.
Out the door.
Okay. What if they have good character, they have no capacity or little capacity or limited capacity, or they don't have the capacity, but they have plenty collateral. So they have excellent character.
No. No. They don't have no capacity to pay.
All righty, I'm gonna do something here.
But the collateral is held in the event that they can't pay, so yeah.
But
okay,
then
but
that means we're lending.
Go ahead.
That means we lending to somebody who we know can't pay and we holding their collateral. That's an ill intent.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. If we know they can't pay, why we lended them in the first place?
Right.
Okay. So I'm gonna put something here and let's discuss it.
No and maybe. So what's the maybe for? What is
I totally with you. What's the maybe for? You know the maybe is for politicians.
PEPs.
They never have the capacity, but they have the character. Well, they don't even have the character. All they have is the insurance, which is their job title.
I am not going to comment on that. I plead the fifth. I'm going to turn American right now, and I'm going to plead the fifth.
Because I will tell you, most politicians, their loans are the worst.
Okay.
Mr. Nottage, we know you write some of them loans in the past, Mr. Nottage.
I am not going to comment. I'm not going to comment. They're not going to comment. Okay, but maybe, okay, maybe because the client might be able to turn some collateral that they have into a profit-making venture. Does that make sense? They might be able to turn a collateral that they own into a profit-making venture.
You will put an asterisk at the bottom of the slide with that note, or you? I'll write it.
So, you may ask for an example. I'm glad you asked for an example. So I will give you an example.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's suppose that let's call the person Jason. Okay. So let's say that Jason has a building next door to him that the property, he owns it. Okay. But the building is not used. Alrighty. The property was left to Jason by a relative. Okay. Jason and his mother lives in the house next door. So Jason and his mother, they live together in the house next door. Okay. So he owns the house that they're living in, and he owns the property next door. Okay. Jason is about 25, and his mother is in her mid to late 50s. So she's healthy. Okay. But she has been a housewife all her life, except that from the house, she used to sell cup and salty and things like that. Okay, and soda and stuff. All right. So Jason can come to you and ask for about $10,000 to renovate the property next door, paint it up, get a counter or whatever it is, get some inventory, so that what his mother is doing in the house on a small scale, she can now have a little convenience store next door. Okay. So she is running the convenience store. So she's selling, what she normally sells, plus bread and cream and all the other things. Okay. So he's getting an income from that. Okay. So the mother's earning her income, plus she's running the business. So he's paying her a little salary, plus he's getting income from selling grocery items. So he has turned a collateral into a profit-making venture.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm your dog's little equity too.
Alrighty. So he has so the extent to which he can generate and let me tell you, a lot of those little community stores, mom and pop stuff, they make some good money.
Oh, they are, especially now, they're making plenty money.
Okay? They make some good money. Okay. Don't sleep on them. It's just that sometimes they're not managed well.
Yeah. Because
as Bahamians, we have not learned the difference between income and profit. We believe everything that comes in is profit, and so we sell it. I mean, we spend it. Okay. We don't take into consideration, okay, well, I have overhead, I have electricity to pay, I have salaries to pay, the cost of the goods purchased. Okay. So when I sell a dress, or when I sell a loaf of bread, the money I make from that is not profit. I have to now see how much of that. And normally the profit margin, a good profit margin, a starting point is about 35% or more. Okay. So if I make $1 selling something, I can't go spend that dollar. The most I can spend is probably 35 cents on that dollar. Okay, so so like I said, you know, the problem with our mom and pop shops, if you can call that, or the neighborhood convenience store, is that when they fail or the people are not doing well, it's because of money management. They're not managing the money well. Okay, they confuse income with profit. Okay, so they don't allow the money to go through the account and do proper accounting and see after all expenses what profit they've made. Okay, so again, that's my take on maybe. All right, but generally speaking, no. Okay, so if the person has a lot of collateral and good character but no capacity, it's a no. Okay, but the maybe will be like in the example I gave. Okay, if you can turn a collateral into a profit-making venture. Okay, now what if they have a lot of capacity and a lot of collateral, but no character?
No, I think characters would build the foundation for any loan.
Yeah,
Or
character.
for, I mean,
Character,
anything substantial
yes,
in
yes.
general.
Character is paramount, and that is why I started with character. Even in credit C's, I started with character because even though it doesn't follow alphabetically, you know, because you have the CA capacity and that sort of stuff, right? But to me, character was most important, and I tried,
And
even though in credit C's, to put it alphabetically, I also tried to put in ranking order.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, Mr. Norwich, I'm going to stray off a little when we speak about character, because that's even in day-to-day life. You could have a leader who has the ability, the capability in leading, but if they don't have a character as it relates to behaviors to know how to handle their staff, they still don't get that output.
Yes.
So I mean,
yes.
it not only goes to loan. To me, it's like you said, it's paramount. It's a foundation for everything.
Yes. Exactly. Okay, and let's look at this question. Class exercise, we end with the class exercise. Okay. Henry has extensive assets worth $2.95 million, of which 1.85 million is in real estate and 0.65 million is in cash. Okay. The balance is in stocks and shares, vehicles, furniture and jewelry. He earns $10,000 monthly. He is not married, but has one daughter who lives with her mother. Henry's credit cards are always over the limit. He has an action outstanding against him in the court for child support. And he had a poorly paid loan with Bay Street Bank that was repaid 5 months ago. That was just repaid 5 months ago. He wants to borrow $39,000 from your bank, repayable over 7 years at $750 a month. The total debt service ratio would be 7.5%. The loan would be approved. The loan should be approved. This is the question. The loan should be approved because of the extensive assets, collateral, and large income capacity he has. True or false?
Sorry, Mr. Norwich, you can repeat what we're supposed to be doing again, please. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, answer the question, true or false?
False.
Oh, okay.
So the loan should be approved because of the extensive false.
Okay, anyone else want to have a shot at it? We have one person saying false.
False.
False. Anybody else? Someone want to say true? For those who say false, why false?
First of all, his character at the beginning speaks, it speaks clearly in that his character, Even though his ability, like in terms of his assets, can pay, but his character trumps everything. He is
Yeah,
delinquent.
he ain't got no character.
He's like a Trump. I'm sorry. All right. Because he
Uh,
just in
okay.
always
he-
over the limit with his credit cards. He already has an outstanding an action in the court for child support. He has too many strikes against him in terms of his character, which to me everything else falls away.
Yeah. So he has, he has the capacity because total debt service ratio is less than 10%,
Yeah.
7.5%.
Right.
So he has the capacity. So,
Capacity.
it makes you wonder why, I mean, sometimes with child support, they do it to spite the baby mama or the baby daddy, depending, because the reverse could happen as well. It could be a woman, who having to pay the man because the child with the man. But in this instance, in most instances, it is the man having to pay child support, right? And so apart from that, he can easily take care of all these things. He can take care of child support easily. He can pay his credit cards. The bad loan that he had at Bay Street Bank, he could have taken. He has the capacity to do it, but he just doesn't have the character. He just has a nonchalant, I don't care attitude.
Yeah.
Or he's just a very disgusting person. Okay, so that is false. Alrighty. So that ends chapter 7, and try to attempt the review questions. Okay, I'm going to send a part of this. I'm going to send the last. That's just putting the big three together, everything together. Okay, but with regard to question number 1 on page 39, I'm as part of this PowerPoint presentation, I'll send a breakdown of the answer. Although you'll not have this type of question in the exam, but it explains, the employment. Says, how do you verify, ratify, or confirm the information that is employment, income, current credit facilities provided to you by the client at the application stage? So it starts, employment and income information contained in the employment letter may be verified by calling the company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Additionally, recent pay stubs should be obtained and bank and checked against the employment letter and bank record statements. Okay, and then existing credit facilities can be verified by obtaining printouts. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so I will send that in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so before I sign off, are there any questions?
When will we be able to receive our results for the midterm?
You'll get those early next week.
With the
Once I get the script,
Any homework this week?
yes, you will be getting. Okay, so the reading assignment is chapter 8. Reading assignment is chapter 8, and I will send the homework electronically. You'll probably get that in the morning. Okay, if not tonight. Okay, so begin reading chapter 8. I know there are a couple blanks at the beginning in there, but still look over, see if you understand some of the other stuff. Chapter 8, and like I said, I'll send the homework assignment. Okay. As the next class, we'll go over quickly the exam questions and begin and hopefully complete chapter 8. or at least the significant part of Chapter 8. All right? So there are no other questions.
Yes, sir.
I'll have a good night.
Okay, good night.
Night.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Your tap was almost